Hi guys, welcome to Nene Math. It's me, Nene, and today we are going to start to learn about defining and identifying angles. But before we do that, I wanted to mention these three types of lines. The first one is called a line, and it has two arrows at the ends, meaning that this line will continue to go on forever and ever, and there won't be any curves, it will just be a straight line. The next line is called a line segment, and this line segment has two endpoints, meaning that it won't continue to move on forever and ever, just like the line above. Moving on to our last line, this is called a ray, and it is a combination of a line and a line segment where one side doesn't continue to move on while the other does. So let's start with our first question to name all the angles. So we have a word bank, so that's pretty great. So now let us start with the first question. We have this angle and it equals 90 degrees since it is really straight and it has this square. So this is going to be a right angle since it equals 90 degrees. The next angle looks much greater than 90 degrees, so you can automatically tell that it is an obtuse angle. So for the next angle, this is less than 90 degrees. So knowing that, we can tell that it is an acute angle. So moving on to the next question. This looks like just like the first line I drew. And it is a type of angle too, and it equals 180 degrees and is called a straight angle, which makes sense since lines are straight. So moving on to the next angle, this angle looks very like an acute angle, except it is not less than 90 degrees, it is actually greater than 180 degrees. But it is less than 360 degrees. So this is called a reflex angle. So moving on to the next angle, this angle is very unique, and this is called a vertical angle. And this is because, let me write some variables, A, B, C, and D. And we can see that A and D have the same measurement and B and C have the same measurement. So moving on to the third row, we have an angle that looks like a right angle, but has two angles and shares a common vertex and a ray. And this is called a complementary angle, since there are two angles adding up to 90 degrees. So I'm going to write angle X and angle Y, and I'm going to write X plus Y equals 90 degrees. So moving on to our next angle, this angle looks very similar, but it is called an adjacent angle, since there are two angles that share a common ray and also they share a common vertex. But looking at the last angle, it looks very similar to that adjacent angle since there is a common vertex and there is a common ray. So this means that the last angle can also be called adjacent, except those two angles add up to 90 degrees. So that separates those two angles from each other. So moving on to our last angle, this is going to be called a supplementary angle, and it is also adjacent, but this has a line, and that equals 180 degrees, and there are two angles, and both of those angles add up to 180 degrees. Finally, let's move on to our last problem, where we have to find the missing angle measurement, which is x. So looking at this is 90 degrees, it's a right angle. So we're just going to write an equation, 38 plus x equals 90, and we're just going to subtract 38 from both sides, and we are just going to have x left, and I'm going to do my subtraction. So our final answer would be 52 degrees. So now I'm going to write that x equals 52 degrees. So guys, that is the end of our video. So thank you for watching and stay tuned for more. Bye!